The past few days, I had been tagging along with a matchmaking group. My intention? To enjoy the free food and drinks at the events while blending into the lively atmosphere. Honestly, I wasn't there to find love, but rather to amuse myself by observing the dating habits of modern bachelors and bachelorettes. The group wasn't just young singles. Among the members were a handful of elderly women eagerly seeking matches for their children. One day, one of these women dropped a bombshell that sent the group into a frenzy. She casually announced, "I own 53 rental properties, 3 mansions, and 5 adorable cats. All of this, along with additional assets, will be inherited by my only son. On top of that, I'm willing to provide my future daughter-in-law with a monthly allowance of $50,000. The chat erupted with messages from women of all backgrounds vying for her attention. Questions flooded in, asking if her claims were true. With confidence, she confirmed her statement. But then she added, "There's just one condition. My son is in a vegetative state. I hope his future wife won't mind." A heavy silence fell over the group, but I couldn't help chuckling. To me, this sounded like a golden opportunity wrapped in a velvet bow. I had already decided long ago that marriage wasn't part of my plans. Why tie myself down? Life was better lived on my own terms. But if marrying a man in a vegetative state meant financial freedom, that didn't sound too bad. Clara Foster, had one great love in life: money. Without hesitation, I sent a message in the group chat. "Why would I mind? Your son is clearly my destined sleeping prince." The group exploded in laughter and applause. Messages poured in, calling me bold, funny, and even shameless. I didn't care. To me, it was all worth it. Moments later, the woman messaged me privately. "Are you serious? Do you actually want to marry my son, or are you just joking?" "Of course I'm serious."
"Why?"
"For the money," I replied bluntly. There was no point in sugarcoating it. I was in it for the fortune. She went silent, and I assumed I had blown my chance. But to my surprise, I received a transfer notification. She had sent me $500 as a travel allowance and invited me to visit her at Mansion 9 in Blue Wave Bay, located in Golden Meadows. She promised a warm welcome. Golden Meadows was the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, with mansions averaging over $1 million. This woman wasn't just rich, she was obscenely wealthy. Grinning, I shamelessly accepted the money and set off immediately. When I arrived at Mansion 9, I was greeted by an atmosphere of luxury and elegance. The mansion's exterior was stunning, with meticulously maintained gardens and an air of nobility that made me feel slightly out of place. After straightening my hair and smoothing my clothes, I rang the doorbell. A glamorous woman in her 40s opened the door, her radiant smile lighting up the entrance. She exuded sophistication, appearing no older than her early 30s. Her flawless skin and impeccable fashion sense made me feel like I was meeting a celebrity. "Hello, my name is Clara Foster," I introduced myself, extending a hand. "I'm a graduate of a prestigious Ivy League university currently preparing for the civil service examination." The woman, Olivia Harrington, shook my hand warmly, her eyes gleaming with approval. "You're young, beautiful, and accomplished." "Wonderful." After exchanging pleasantries, she invited me inside, pouring tea as we sat in the opulent living room. She asked about my background, family, work, and aspirations. "My parents divorced when I was young, and neither of them kept in touch with me. I've been on my own ever since," I explained. "As for work, I'm a fashion designer with an annual salary of around $100,000. Emily nodded thoughtfully, her expression difficult to read. She didn't push further, and soon motioned for me to follow her upstairs. "Are we going to meet my sleeping prince now?" I teased lightly. She smiled softly.
"Yes."
"My son is also my precious sleeping prince." We climbed to the 3rd floor and entered a bedroom. I wasn't expecting much. I had already steeled myself for a purely transactional relationship. I didn't need romance or affection. All I needed was to secure the arrangement and fulfill my part. But the moment I saw him, my breath caught. He lay peacefully on the bed, his long lashes casting delicate shadows on his cheeks. His features were so refined, they seemed like the work of a master sculptor. The sharp lines of his collarbones peeked out from under his shirt, exuding an almost ethereal elegance. My heart skipped a beat, and my mind raced. This is my prince. For the first time, I felt something more than ambition or greed. Was it excitement? Was it attraction? Whatever it was, one thing became clear. This was not going to be as straightforward as I had imagined. I never expected my sleeping prince to be so breathtakingly handsome. He looked like he had stepped out of a magazine. For years, I had been indifferent to men, but now everything seemed different. Perhaps the rumors were true. Appearances really did have a strange power over us. Emily, the poised woman at his bedside, gently held her son's hand, patting it softly as she glanced at me. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed a deep sadness. "Isabella, this is my son, Marcus. His father passed away when he was just a child. I prayed for him to grow up strong and healthy, but fate had other plans." Her voice wavered, and tears filled her eyes as she stared at Marcus's still form. A wave of sympathy washed over me. Although I was here for selfish reasons, it was impossible not to feel the weight of this family's tragedy. "Maybe a miracle will happen, and Marcus will wake up," I said, attempting to offer a glimmer of hope. She shook her head, her lips quivering. "He's been under treatment for so long, and the doctors have confirmed that his condition is permanent." Her voice cracked, and fresh tears threatened to fall. Unable to find the right words, I chose to remain silent. After a while, Emily composed herself and led me back downstairs. "Isabella, if you're willing, you can move in now. Stay here for 6 months, and if you don't change your mind, we can talk about the marriage." I blinked, surprised. "Move in now?" "Yes. My commitments in Silver Lake have been delayed far too long, and I must leave soon. The staff will help you settle in. Treat this house as your own," she said with a reassuring smile. I glanced around at the opulent mansion. Moving in here felt like stepping into a dream. This place radiated luxury and comfort. "All right," I agreed with a nod. Her trust in me was unexpected, but I wasn't going to waste the opportunity. Emily smiled warmly. "Good. Since you're here for financial reasons, I'll need to conduct a full background check." "That's fine with you, isn't it?" What a straightforward woman. "Of course," I replied without hesitation. She shook my hand firmly. "You're honest, Isabella, and I like that about you." Over the past 2 years, I've met many potential daughters-in-law, but none of them felt right. "You're the first who seems genuine." Her words caught me off guard. "Genuine? Me?" Still, I managed a polite smile and nodded. "I'll leave everything to you. Just keep Marcus company, talk to him, and let the staff handle the rest. I'll transfer your allowance monthly," she added. I couldn't stop myself from nodding enthusiastically. That very day, Emily departed for Silver Lake, and I officially moved into the mansion with just a few bags. The butler and maids were indeed present, though they had little to do in such a well-maintained home. Most of the time, they lingered around idly, leaving me to my own devices. I chose the room next to Marcus's. It was bright and airy, with large windows that overlooked the garden, a perfect spot for relaxing or studying. After unpacking, I decided to visit Marcus. When I entered his room, he looked just as peaceful as before. In the soft light, his handsome features seemed even more striking. "What a waste," I murmured under my breath. "A prince like you doesn't belong in this state." Taking a seat by his bed, I introduced myself with a small grin. "Hello, Mr. Marcus. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Isabella Foster, your future wife. From today onwards, I'll be taking care of you." As expected, he didn't respond. Later, I returned to my room and pulled out my laptop. Curiosity got the better of me, and I started researching vegetative states. I learned there were 3 types. One where patients had minimal consciousness, another where they could open their eyes subconsciously but remained unaware, and the last, a permanent vegetative state, where no consciousness remained at all. Unfortunately, Marcus fell into the 3rd category. I also looked into the chances of recovery. While there were cases of miraculous recoveries, They were incredibly rare, 1 in a million at best. Techniques like stimulation and massage could offer slight improvement, but the odds were practically non-existent. With a sigh, I closed the laptop. A 1 in a million chance was as good as no chance at all. A faint cough startled me, pulling me from my thoughts. The cough had startled me, but I dismissed it as a coincidence. Perhaps one of the staff had been passing by, and I had simply overreacted. Still, the unease lingered. The next day, I woke up early and decided to visit Marcus again. His room was as silent as ever, and he lay there, motionless, with the same serene expression. I sat by his side, observing his face for a long moment. It was hard to believe that someone so incredibly beautiful could be trapped in a body without consciousness. Hesitantly, I took his hand and spoke softly. "I know you can't hear me, but I hope, in some way, you can feel that I'm here." I brushed my fingers across his forehead, a reflexive gesture, and was struck by the smoothness of his skin. "You don't deserve this," I muttered, more to myself than to him. "I know I'm here for selfish reasons. I'm doing this for the money. But maybe, in some way, this is better than nothing. Maybe you know, deep down, that someone is here for you." Over the following days, my routine began to revolve around Marcus. In the mornings, I would visit him, talk about mundane things, and read aloud from whatever book I could find in the house. In the afternoons, I took time for myself, strolling through the gardens or attempting to study, though my thoughts often wandered. At night, before bed, I would stop by his room for a brief goodnight conversation. One evening, as I was saying goodbye, I noticed something odd. His hand felt warmer than usual. It was subtle, but it caught my attention. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination. Yet that night, I dreamed of him. In the dream, Marcus opened his eyes and smiled at me. His smile was warm, almost radiant, and though his lips moved, I couldn't understand what he was saying. I woke up with a start, my heart racing, and found it difficult to fall back asleep. In the days that followed, small details began to gnaw at me. One of the maids casually mentioned hearing a sound from Marcus's room during the night, but I dismissed it as her imagination. Still, something seemed to be shifting, whether in him or in me, I wasn't sure. I began to feel an inexplicable connection to him, as though he were becoming a part of my life in a way I hadn't anticipated. Then, one morning, while I was holding his hand and reading to him, I felt it. A faint movement. It was so slight I almost doubted myself, but his hand had undeniably responded to mine. My breath caught, and I stared at him, searching for any other signs of awareness. His face remained as still as ever, but I couldn't shake what I had felt. "Marcus? Can you hear me?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Of course, there was no answer, but my heart pounded in my chest. I reported what I had experienced to the family doctor, who came to examine him. The diagnosis remained the same, a permanent vegetative state. However, the doctor encouraged me to continue interacting with him. "There's no harm in providing stimulation. Even if the chances of recovery are slim, engagement is beneficial," he said in a clinical tone. I left the conversation frustrated but more determined than ever. If something was changing, I needed to understand it. One evening, while walking through the garden and reflecting on my life and the choices that had brought me here, I heard a sound from Marcus's room. This time, it wasn't a cough but something resembling a soft groan. I rushed upstairs, my heart racing. When I entered, he was as I had left him, still and peaceful. Yet, the atmosphere in the room felt heavier, almost charged. That's when I noticed the balcony door was open and the curtains were billowing in the breeze. I closed the door but couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening. I began to notice changes in the behavior of the house staff as well. The butler, usually calm and composed, seemed tense. The maids whispered to one another, abruptly stopping when I approached. I asked them directly if something was wrong, but they insisted everything was fine. One night, I woke up with a strange feeling and decided to check on Marcus. When I entered his room, I nearly stumbled. Something was off. The bed looked slightly different, as though someone had adjusted it. A faint scent lingered in the air, like perfume, though I hadn't worn any that day. My pulse quickened as I scanned the room for an explanation. I must be imagining things, I murmured to myself, leaving quickly. But the feeling wouldn't leave me. Day by day, it grew stronger. It was as if there was something everyone in the house knew, something I was being kept in the dark about. I was certain something was happening in that house, something no one wanted me to know. The feeling that the staff knew more than they were letting on consumed me day by day. My relationship with Marcus, which had initially been based on self-interest, had transformed into something I couldn't explain. He was there, motionless, yet his presence was so strong it was impossible to ignore. That night, I waited until everyone in the house was asleep. The absolute silence made every sound feel thunderous, but I was determined. I crept into Marcus's room, lit only by the moonlight streaming through the curtains. He was as he always was, but there was something about the atmosphere that made me feel I wasn't alone. I approached his bed and, for the first time, decided to examine the details around him. That's when I noticed something strange, a small journal tucked under the bedside table, almost out of sight. Carefully, I retrieved it and returned to my room. My heart pounded as I opened it, revealing pages filled with elegant handwriting, likely Emily's. The journal told a story that felt surreal. Emily recounted how Marcus had entered his vegetative state after a car accident, but his condition wasn't entirely natural. According to her writings, an experimental treatment had been administered, something that was supposed to help him recover. However, the results had been unexpected. She mentioned strange occurrences, sporadic movements, sounds he supposedly couldn't make, and even the impression that Marcus was conscious, but unable to communicate. The final entries were chilling. Marcus is trapped between two worlds. It's not just his body that's still, his mind is fighting. He's not completely here, but he hasn't left either. The doctors don't believe me, but I know he's trying to come back. I closed the journal, my mind racing. I needed answers. I returned to Marcus's room, a mix of fear and determination driving me. Sitting beside him, I took his hand and spoke softly. "Marcus, if you're here, if you can hear me, give me a sign." Nothing happened. The room remained silent except for the sound of my rapid heartbeat. But then, suddenly, I felt a faint squeeze on my hand. It was so quick I almost doubted it, but the certainty struck me like lightning. He was trying to communicate. In the days that followed, I watched Marcus more closely. I spoke to him more often, encouraging him to respond. Small signs began to emerge, a slight twitch of a finger, the faintest sound of a sigh. I knew something was changing. The staff began to notice my persistence and grew more reserved, as though they feared I was uncovering something they wanted to remain hidden. Then Emily returned to the mansion unexpectedly. She seemed surprised to see me so involved with Marcus. I confronted her, holding the journal in my hand, and asked directly, "What really happened to him? Why are you hiding this?" Emily hesitated, but finally broke down. "You wouldn't understand. I did everything for him. I tried to save my son from a worse fate, but now I don't know if I made the right choice." She confessed that the experimental treatment had been risky and that doctors had warned it could leave Marcus trapped between life and death. Even so, she had accepted the risk, as the alternative was to let him go. Her admission shook me, but it also steeled my resolve. "If there's any part of Marcus still here, I'm going to bring him back," I promised. In the months that followed, I poured all my energy into helping Marcus recover. I read to him, played music, and encouraged Emily to hire specialists to evaluate new therapies. It was a slow, frustrating process full of moments of doubt, but gradually the signs of progress became undeniable. One day, as I held his hand and spoke about the garden, he squeezed my hand again, this time with enough strength to leave no doubt. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, "You're coming back, Marcus." "I know you are." The progress was gradual but undeniable. After months of effort, Marcus opened his eyes for the first time. The moment was brief, but it was filled with meaning. His gaze met mine, and for a second, it felt as though everything around us had stopped. He tried to speak, but only a raspy sound came out. Even so, it was enough to fill me with hope. Emily wept with relief at seeing her son finally show signs of consciousness. The mansion, once so silent, became a place of renewed energy. The doctors were astonished, calling it a miracle. But I knew it wasn't just luck. It was Marcus's fight and the connection we had somehow built. In the end, I realized my initial motivation for being there had disappeared. The money no longer mattered. I was there for Marcus, for the person he was, and the life he still had ahead of him. As he continued to fight, I promised to stay by his side, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. What had begun as a cold agreement had turned into something real. Marcus was coming back, and I knew that together, we could face anything.